I decided to study mediation as I was going through my divorce. There's a lot of frustration sometimes coming out of a long relationship where you've been married, you've had children together, but there are often unmet needs on both sides. And it's to be able to put those on the table, have the other one hear and actually acknowledge those needs. And then from there on, have mutual respect again to be able to build and find solutions that work for everyone. Obviously, through my own experience, they do say it is the second most traumatic experience in one's life. So it's a big event. I had my family, I had my friends, I had a great lawyer, but despite all of that, it's a very lonely process. It's a moment where fear takes over. There's so many implications and so many unknowns that it's very easy to get lost. A lot of people have that very strong need to have someone tell them, you were right, it's okay. And the fact is, if you do go to court, that's not what you're going to get. Because that's the thing, going through litigation, there's never a winner and a loser. Everybody ends up losing. The emotional, financial toll, the toll on your health, the toll on the children is huge. I think I'm humble now more than I ever was, because you've built a career in a specific area for me, for over 2 decades. So you develop a certain expertise, and all of a sudden you start from scratch. And you might have the idea, which I felt fully aligned with. Then there's business development that I'd never done before. There's accounting, there's digital marketing, there's all this world. And obviously as an entrepreneur, you have to do it on your own.
Melanie, thank you for being here. Thank you for reaching out to come and tell us a little bit about your journey. If we had to start, because obviously people don't know who you are, but what would be 2 things that define the woman you're today?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Happy to be here today. 2 things. Curious, as in always willing to learn, to grow, to discover new things, to meet new people, to be challenged. So that's one thing I think that defines me today, or that always has, but that continues to define me today. And the other thing, humble. Okay. I think, which has to do with my career change and starting over again, starting from scratch, rebuilding, learning. So humble, I would say, today. Okay.
And tell us a little bit about this, starting over.
So what led up to it? I think in a way I always had that strive to one day work on my own. I worked in communications for over 20 years in the corporate environment, high pressure. And at some point I started having an idea, because initially I thought maybe I can become a communication consultant, just work external, advise clients. And then 2 things happened in parallel. One was that in the working environment, I realized that there were always disagreements, which is common in a workplace. But I spent more and more time trying to find or help people find solutions that would work for all of them. Okay. So indirectly started doing a bit of mediation. Okay. And in parallel, went through my own divorce, in which I realized that the procedures are quite lengthy and it could take a toll. And the children are often impacted as well, seeing friends and family around me going through it as well. The children are impacted. And there again, it brought me back to conflict resolution. And I thought, this is it. Let me study mediation. Okay. And so I started doing a CAS in parallel to my work. Okay. And transitioned that way.
And was mediation something how did that come to you? Was it something progressive? Was it something you've already been curious about? Has it already piqued your attention in some sort of other way than in the work sphere, or?
Not really, actually, because I didn't know much about it until a few years ago. Okay. If you go back 10 years, you heard about mediation in political context, international relations. Yeah. But on a day-to-day level at work or at home, it's not a word. I didn't really understand how it could help solve problems. So it wasn't an idea that I had for a really long time. Okay. It was more in the last few years realizing on one hand that I was indirectly doing it at work. Yeah. And then realizing that on a personal front, there's a lot that could be done through mediation to resolve unmet needs, emotions. There are always emotions behind every conflict. Yeah. They're humans and their emotions. So whether it's in a work environment or personal environment, I realized that there's something to be done.
And so you do this cast while you're working. How long is it? How long? Yeah. How long is it? How is that?
That was 2 years.
Okay.
2 years working 80%. Had my children that were still quite young at the time, half time, 1 week every other week. And then really, and doing the guests, that was a few days presential per month.
Okay.
And then the rest working at home, and you follow with an internship, the stage.
Okay.
So after 2 years, you have a guest.
Okay.
Which I did at the University of Geneva.
Okay.
And yeah.
And how is it to go back to study?
Weird. It was good in the sense that everybody who was there, we were all between, let's say, our 30s and 60s.
Okay.
All had a career already, coming from different environments, different paths of lives. There were some lawyers, psychologists, social workers. It was a very broad range of people, but who were all there to study as a second career choice. So it was great. We weren't 20 anymore. It's a different learning experience to start learning again when you're in your 40s. But nonetheless, it does mean having to go back to your school books, to have to write your thesis again and go back to all of that on top of the work that you handle and on top of being a mom as well. So there's a lot to juggle.
And okay, so you did the cast and then you started doing mediation through your work. And that's when also divorce happened, or?
So everything sort of happened at the same time.
Okay.
I decided to study mediation as I was going through my divorce, continued working, then transitioned to become independent. And that's when I was working with my associate at the time. And that's where the idea developed into something more than mediation. So there's the mediation where you do have two people, whether it's in a workplace environment or neighborhoods or in a family environment, two or more people who want to resolve conflict amicably.
Yeah.
But then started thinking about another service that was prompted in part by my own divorce experience, which is that of divorce consulting or divorce coaching, as they call it in Anglo-Saxon countries. And that's one-on-one guidance for men or women going through a divorce. That really helps them reduce the level of conflict, despite only working with one person. It has a direct impact on the conflict, and it helps them limit the emotional and financial costs of a divorce.
That is, I remember the first time you told me, I was like, what? That exists? Where, when, how? Because it's crazy the amount of divorces you hear about. And I've never heard someone talk about like divorce consultant. And I'm like, what is it? So tell me a little bit more about that. Where does it come from? Yeah.
So it is new in Switzerland, but it does exist. It's much more developed in Anglo-Saxon countries, but here it's something that people are not used to yet. And what I always tell people, it doesn't mean that I'm pro-divorce at all, quite the opposite. But it's just like you were saying, unfortunately, the statistics in Switzerland as well, especially, are there. One couple out of every other couple ends up getting divorced. More and more people now don't get married, but they separate as well, with children, real estate, and everything else that follows. So the consequences are heavy as well. And what people, obviously, when you haven't been through a divorce before, so you don't know what it's like, but whether it's amicable or it goes through litigation, whether it lasts a few months or years, it's a marathon. It's not something you go through quickly. And the largest part that's often unspoken about, it's the emotional overwhelm of a divorce. So you might be surrounded by friends, by a lawyer, by family. The lawyer is there to address the legal aspect. Friends and family are there. They are there to provide emotional support, but they're not neutral. And this is where I come in. It's really to provide that objective, neutral guidance, hand-holding every step of the way, with the view of planning, because that's the other thing. Family and friends are not necessarily trained to support on the legal ecosystem, on the emotional aspect, on the practical aspect of a divorce. So it's really to provide that emotional, practical guidance, explain what's about to happen, explain what the different options are, because you could divorce amicably, you can go through litigation. How do you choose your lawyer? How to negotiate? But first and foremost, every step of the way, deal with the person's emotions, help them manage those emotions at a time where decision-making is more important than ever.
And how did that come to you? Like the idea, the motivation to do this, to take that, I want to say pain as well, because it is a pain when someone goes through a divorce and like handhold almost into that journey, the person. So how did that come?
I think, obviously through my own experience going through divorce, it's they do say it is the second most traumatic experience in one's life. So it's a big event. At the time, we realized when we started looking into it that there was individual guidance, that type of work did exist in other countries, and it's something I lacked. I had my family, I had my friends, I had a great lawyer, but despite all of that, it's a very lonely process. You don't know who to turn to. There were moments I didn't quite understand. I didn't even know how to go about the first steps in my divorce. It sounds silly from the outside, but it's true. It's a moment where all your repères are lost. It has an impact on your health, on your finances, on your work, on your children. Huge. It's a moment where fear takes over completely. Fear of the unknown, fear of what will happen to your kids, fear of what will happen to your logistical arrangements, to the school, there's so many implications and so many unknowns that it's very easy to get lost. Even though you're used to being a very pragmatic person, it's a moment where the rug gets taken from under your feet.
I mean, where the foundations are moved, I guess.
At a time where that's the other thing, people actually don't realize in a divorce, you do have some control over how it goes. But for that, you need to be able to think clearly, rationally. You need to be able to understand what's going on. If you do go through litigation, it's also a very technical world you get brought into. I remember, despite being Swiss, and this is the other thing, there are a lot of expats here in Switzerland as well, for who there's a language barrier. They don't have family and friends to support, and they don't know much about the system. But even myself being Swiss, I remember being thrown into this unknown with certain terms, certain deadlines, acronyms, and you feel completely lost, and it's all very technical. So that's where I come in as well, to help to simplify everything that's happening, to help the person really understand what's going on, to help them clarify their options, their priorities, and to take it step by step. And it really came from
your personal
my own experience.
Which often, like when you go into a new journey, it often comes from your personal experience, something that you wish you had at that moment. And in that, and now of what you do you use that mediation class that you did? Like, it kind of is connected, no?
Completely. And actually, in the US, they do perceive divorce coaching as a form of ADR, alternative dispute resolution.
Okay.
Despite you only, again, accompanying one person, it's all about conflict management in a way. Try to work with the emotions. And again, so I always say I'm not a lawyer. I'm not there to give legal advice. I give legal information, but not advice, nor am I a therapist. And the work I do with the people, the men and women I work with, often when they come, when you're about to divorce or you're going through the process, the emotions are there. You don't necessarily have the bandwidth to do a huge amount of therapeutic work on yourself right there and then. So I work with them and the emotions they have at that time to be able to keep their head above the water. That's really the work I do, is to be able to stay afloat in the present moment. And then they might choose to continue to do some therapy afterwards, where there's a bit more bandwidth.
And how do you do that?
How do I do that? It's a lot of So going back to, there are tools that I use for mediation.
Okay.
It's a lot of active listening. It's obviously you need a lot of empathy, I think, to be able to do that. Understand where the person's coming from, listen, try to reassure them, help them take a step back at a moment where they feel completely overwhelmed. Provide very practical advice, very hands-on advice. A big part of what I do that goes back to mediation as well is helping to communicate, whether it's with the ex-partner, even during the whole process, because again, I see sometimes messages, and I went through it myself, where you just have those lengthy emails full of emotions, and you just know that by sending that, it's just going to amplify the conflict and make it even worse. So they write it, which makes them feel better often. And then we go through it again. We try to simplify. We try to stick to the facts. We try to focus when there are children involved on the co-parenting. So there's a lot of communicating to the children as well about the separation. That's a huge moment in one's divorce. That's one of the biggest milestones often. So communication tools, communication techniques, helping them go through that transition from a couple to co-parents, again, when there are children involved, is another big part of it. But so it's a mix of emotional support, being there to listen, to understand, because that's, I think, one thing we talked about. It's that need for emotional justice.
Yeah.
A lot of people have that very strong need to have someone tell them, you were right, it's okay, he or she was wrong. And the fact is, if you do go to court, that's not what you're going to get. The lawyers, the courts deal with facts.
Yeah.
And often people go through all of that, and there's a huge gap between what they perceive as a sense of justice and the outcome of a procedure. And so we try to work on that, to bridge that gap, maybe.
Yeah, it's super complex because, I mean, emotions, I think it's one of the most difficult topic and element in people's life. And it has such a, depending on your journey, where you come from, and as well, it has such a baggage to it as well that I've seen some divorce and from the outside, sometimes I will tell people I know going through it that I understand, but from a objective perspective, this and this, and I can see, and then I add, I'm like, I say this with love. Do not, but because it's true, you can feel the injustice, like, and it's not from outside, it's not rational, but then when you go inside, you're like, yeah, I get it. It comes from different places.
For the person who does feel those emotions, it is for them completely rational, at least at the time.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think it's important to acknowledge those emotions, because that's the thing. Going through a divorce, you often come out of it thinking my emotions were not heard. They weren't acknowledged. So I still live with them now, and it's hard for me to get on to the next or move on to the next chapter in my life. So I think it's a huge part of being able to go through a divorce, it's to acknowledge those emotions. It's okay, they're there, whether it's fear, anger, being bitter, being jealous, being whatever, good or bad. There are no such things, actually, sort of bad emotions. All of them have their place. To acknowledge them, to deposit them in a way, and to address them, because one of the biggest one that's almost always there is fear. And the fear is driven by a lot of unknowns, questions waiting to be answered. So that's, once we've acknowledged those emotions, we start going through all those questions one by one, finding the answers to all of them. And you could see that the emotions go down over time.
It's so interesting. It's when I found out about it, I was like, oh my God, I wish we talked a bit more about it, because honestly, I think it could prevent as well a lot of disagreements that are just carried by the grief as well of the relationship, of the promises, of the grief in itself, and when there's kids as well, it's so much even more complex, because you see one side might be like, oh, trying to protect and like carrying even more the emotions, the challenge. And so, and I remember that you said that mediation is covered by the state, or
Yes. So mediation, which that's again completely separate to divorce consulting, that is covered in Geneva for people who have a tie to Geneva or are based or work in Geneva. It's covered by the states. So it's a great opportunity. It's really there to try to promote a way of resolving conflicts in a way where everybody has something to gain, because that's the thing going through litigation. There's never a winner and a loser. Everybody ends up losing. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. The emotional, financial toll, the toll on your health, the toll on the children is huge. So if you can try to go in a place with a neutral third party who's there to help you navigate, who's there to help you address those unmet needs. You're talking about there's a lot of frustration sometimes coming out of a long relationship where you've been married, you've had children together, but there are often unmet needs on both sides. And it's to be able to put those on the table, have the other one hear, and actually acknowledge those needs. And then from there on have a mutual understanding or find mutual respect again, to be able to build and find solutions that work for everyone. Because that's the thing. There's no set things, and you still have that control over the way in which you want your divorce to go. And especially if you have children involved, it's about preserving them. It's not the separation itself that really impacts them. It's the conflict. So if you're able to find ways, and there's so much flexibility around it, that works for your family, even as co-parents, that's the best way forward.
Yeah. You mentioned that having empathy is really important in what you're doing. I'm just wondering that, when you're an empath and you might feel the emotions very, very strongly. And like, I know I can be a bit like, sometimes I'll see something and I'll start crying, and then like people are like, why are you crying? I'm like, because I can put myself in their shoes and feel. And I'm just wondering, how do you manage that on your side? Because it can be a lot, to take on, to embrace, to listen. And even if you're just listening and handing the person, it's like, it still like it impacts you, I guess. It has an impact.
It's true. No, it definitely does. I think obviously you need to do the work on yourself before, especially with regards to divorce. If you've gone through it yourself, you need to do the work on yourself and have gone through that process and closed that chapter in a way and moved on before you're there to help others. Because it can't. Otherwise, there are too many things that will directly trigger you,
right? Yeah.
And that I can imagine becomes really hard. So I think that's the first thing, to have enough, to be able to take a step back from your own experience to then be able to go on and help others. But you still take them on. You still feel, yes, no, it's true. It does have an impact. I think the transition at the end of the day, or reconnecting with, it sounds silly, cliche, but reconnecting with nature, just having breaks every so often and really clearing your mind helps. But ultimately, when you see the people go through, and the people I work with who are able to move through their process step by step, whether it's through a limited period of time or a slightly longer period that I accompany them for, you do see the changes. You do see them coming out of it a bit more serene. You do feel the emotions going down. So you take that. There's a lot of, I feel very grateful to be able to see that as well.
No, I mean, it's a full journey. I think you're witnessing a moment that is very important in that person's life. And it's kind of magic that you're able to be there and support them. And how did you decide to take the leap and do this? Because it's a bit unknown. It means that you're independent. You need to find your people, your clients.
Yeah.
How did that, and plus you just went through a divorce, so I guess like stability is like kind of an anchor. So how did that happen?
It's a whole journey. It's not an easy one. At one point, I just felt it was the right time to leave my job as a salaried employee, which comes with financial security, which I needed at the time more than ever before. Like you said, having gone through my divorce, having 2 young children. So there are many moments where I thought, you're completely crazy to do this right now. Completely. On the other hand, I just felt I had to do it. I was drawn to it. I felt it was right. And despite there being ups and downs, there are moments of doubts. There are moments of small wins where you feel very grateful. You feel proud. You go. I can't explain it. Actually, it wasn't. I want to say it was a rational decision to an extent, but I think part of it was just me following my instinct at that time. And because then it's a huge learning experience.
Yeah.
You might have an idea, which we worked on with my associate at the time, but then there's everything else that goes around it. And that's where I said at the start, I think I'm humble now more than I ever was, because you've built a career in a specific area for me, for over 2 decades. So you develop a certain expertise, and all of a sudden you start from scratch. And you might have the idea, which I felt fully aligned with, but then there's business development that I'd never done before. There's accounting that I'd never done before. There's digital marketing. There's all this world. And obviously, as an entrepreneur, you have to do it on your own.
Yeah.
So it's not easy, but that you realize that actually you can go further than what your fear might suggest.
And would you say that, because a lot of people go through like moments like that are very strong and that have a impact on who you are, and I think that identity is being shifted. And I think very often when you want to change a little bit your career, your path, or so on, it's because it comes within. Because yes, there's exterior elements that have moved things inside, and therefore it makes you want to go for it. But often people are like, the fear of the unknown is too strong. So how did you deal with that?
I've always been someone who likes, I've always liked pushing myself. Okay. I've always liked challenging myself. I've always pushed my boundaries. So I think it's the way in which I was brought up. Where I remember my dad telling us, my sister and I, over and over again, you fall down in life, that's okay. You just stand back up and you keep on moving. So I have that mentality of just continuously challenging myself and moving forward. But it's true that fears at that time really can become at some time overwhelming. But that's when I realized what I said before, you're more capable than your fear might suggest. So it is constant readjustment, constant pushing boundaries further. You have people around you, whether it's family, whether it's had a coach as well who's really helped me, supports entrepreneurs. So he's really been a good sounding board throughout the whole journey. So there are different people that surround you that are there, that are good sounding boards when you have doubts, when you have questions. And I think that's important. You can't just be on your own with your idea and not talk and have those exchanges with others around you.
But I think it's important what you said is the people around you. And that's something that one doesn't realize necessarily how important that is and how much of an impact it can have on what you're about to do or how it influences. Because I see sometimes people, it's funny, the other day I was at a lunch, and this girl was talking about, she has an idea, she's been thinking about it for like 3 years, and you can sense that she's like reaching that point in her life where it would be aligned more with who she is and what she wants. And it was very interesting because there was two other people that were saying, no, but she has a great job, senior level, earning super well, company, very well known, like, very, very, very good. And people were telling her, why would you do that? Like, you're crazy. And I was just like, yeah, go for it. What are you waiting for? And it was so interesting to have the two perspectives and disconnect. Yeah. And they were like, no, but like, you're crazy. Why are you telling her to go for it? And I was like, does it feel more aligned? Yes. Do you want to try? Will you regret not trying? And very simple questions, but I think it's worth like asking yourself.
Yeah.
And then based on the answer, do it or not, and environment is really important of like people that support you. And I think, sometimes we don't realize it. And it's a bit hard also to find the right coach or actually say, okay, I'm going to invest that money into that coach because it's also an investment. And sometimes people are like, yeah, but it's money. Is it worth it? Is it not? And I think it's something I say is like, if you find a coach, ask people if they know that coach. And then, just don't grab the first one because,
No.
There's plenty of coaches today, but there are gems, and those gems usually work by being referred to by XYZ.
And some are free, actually. And that's what I went through. There's specific association, organization,
really?
that
Okay.
really support entrepreneurs. That's the thing. We in Switzerland, or at least for Geneva, for what I know, they're really good at encouraging entrepreneurs, at supporting them. Some on a financial front, if you need investment, some really on the coaching, which is what we had with the Réseau Entreprendre.
Okay.
So you submit your proposal, they choose specific projects, and then you benefit from 2 years of advice from senior people. So it's great. And all of that is free, basically.
Wow.
So there are the tools, but you just need to go out there and find them. But there's a big support system. Even workshops. I remember I started off when I started having the idea because I could connect. I relate to the person you were just talking to. It's actually the moment when you do the switch, you can't really decide when it happens. It's sort of out of nowhere, but I think the idea builds over many months,
unconsciously in the back.
Exactly.
It just
so there's a lot of
rooms
thought process.
there.
Exactly. And during that time, it's worth going to different sessions, different workshops. There's the La Fédération des Entreprises Allemandes. They organize great workshops as well for entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who might be considering going down that route. So a lot of things are here. You just have to go in and try to find them. But it's definitely not a journey that's easy to do. You don't really want to do it on your own. And I think that the family, the close support network is huge as well.
Yeah.
Because when you do have those moments of doubt, to know at the end of the day, nobody's going to believe in you more than you. But it still helps when you have those moments of doubts to have
people that will like
the
lift
support
you
network
up.
saying, this is great, keep on doing it.
No, it's true, and it's really important, and that's something I say to myself. Even I'm like checking, and because I've gone through many changes, and now my friends, they don't even tell me you're crazy. They're like, how long have you thought about it? And I was like, this, and depending on how long, they're like, okay, you should go for it or forget it. You haven't thought about it long enough. And I think that's really, really important. And like you said, to have people that will lift you up, because entrepreneurship has many moments of where you're like, I'm never going to make it. That they help you through. Just remember who you are, what you're capable of, and don't let that go because it's valuable. And what would you say how long have you been doing this now?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And in those 2 years, what lessons have you learned?
The fact that you keep on learning.
Okay.
Basically, it's the fact that it's a constant learning experience. You go to one level initially, you think, oh my gosh, I've never done a business plan before. This is huge. So you do the business plan. And once that's done, there's the next thing that comes along, or you have to work on your accounts. You need to have an end of year bilan and account statement, and you never did that before. Then everybody tells you you've got to be on social media, and I'm not part of the generation that was active on social media. And even working in communications before, it was like a dinosaur in that world. So that's, people tell you you've got to do that, and you listen because they're good advice. Obviously, then it's up to you to build your strategy, but it's good to listen to what people tell you. So then you learn about that. Then you learn about design. Then you try and test your pitch, because business development, first of all, you need to go, there's the imposter syndrome that comes at first. It's a complete change. I was working in the financial industry, going to events where people talked about finance. Then I moved on to consulting on divorce, which is a completely different sphere. So you've got to own the pitch as well. And that, I find, it's been evolving. You try and test, you see what resonates, you see what works, but it's always the sounding board, or the feedback you get from people, even indirect feedback, is huge. So it's always listening, refining, retuning, adapting. So it's constant learning, basically. There's never a moment, at least so far, and it's only been 2 years. It's not huge, even though it feels like a lifetime. But I never came to the moment where I thought, okay, this is settled now. It's
I know how to roll.
No, there's always something else, or a new idea, or something I can tweak, or constant change. So it's the learning, which makes it exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I love learning. I know that the moment I stop learning, I get bored, and then that's where my mind starts like brooming other ideas. No, honestly, because and I realize that's a bit of my pattern, is like the moment I'm too comfortable, you lose me. No, I start thinking unconsciously of like other stuff I can start doing, because I need that. And I think learning is like the best thing in this world. It makes everything very exciting, you know? So,
and that's the thing with what I do, is that even in the coaching, there are never two stories that are the same. You can't apply the same tools, the same strategy. It's not a strategy, but you can't apply the same process. Thank you. Over and over again. Every person is different. Their needs are different. There are the different moments in their separation. The men, women, they all have different needs. So you really have to meet them where they are, and accompany with what they need. It's not you pushing something onto them. It's really being there and meet their needs. So.
And would you say, so for someone that, are your clients coming to you when they're already in the divorce stage, or like they're thinking about it, or when are they coming to you?
Both. Or all throughout the full process.
Okay.
The best time to ideally help a person is either when they've just received the news that their partner wants to divorce, or when they themselves are thinking about it. Okay. And sometimes I've had 1 or 2 meetings with people where they're thinking about it, they're not sure. And the simple fact of explaining how to divorce, the implications, the different ways to divorce, asking them certain questions. What do I have? What do I gain by staying? What do I gain by going? What do I lose by mapping things out, addressing their fears, having a plan of action is enough for them to put their mind at peace, at least temporarily. And then I might not hear from them again, or not right away, because apparently the whole process for those who do take the decision to get divorced, it's usually a few years. It's a long process. So at that moment in time, it's just sometimes soothing the person, making them feel, okay, well, if I do decide, I know what happens. There's certain things I didn't even know about. For example, when you separate in Switzerland, if one party refuses, you've got to be separated for 2 years before you can get divorced.
Oh, wow.
Which to me now sounds obvious, but I had no idea. So simple things for people to know.
2 years is long.
2 years is long.
It's long.
And during that time, you have to think you still need to sort out finances, child custody. So the conflict is already there and can only grow really over time if you go through those lengthy procedures. Yeah.
That's crazy. Why 2 years? Who does that?
If those parties agree, then it could go a lot quicker. But
I mean, there's usually one that is not...
will not, for whatever reason, will disagree. And then it's a long process. So during that time, that's a crucial time as well to help people, because that's when the emotions are the strongest as well, to really help them at that stage. And then it goes all the way through post-divorce, because again, finally you reach the end of it. You think, okay, great, finally through it. But then there's another wave of emotions that come. There's another wave of admin that comes. There's a lot of admin that we don't necessarily realize that comes post-divorce. Some are connected. Some people women might want to change their names back to their maiden names. There's a lot that still comes at that part. And obviously the biggest part is really the adjustment to co-parenting. And that's a lifetime. I would say that's until exactly.
That's until like they're 30 and doing their thing. Yeah. And for people that have, let's say, thinking about divorce or want to divorce, have decided, what advice would you give them, like in that moment that they're thinking about it and they have kids? And maybe their financial, because there's so many, I'm just thinking there's so many impacts, because if you depend financially on the other person, that's really complicated. If you're still working, that maybe there's less, but maybe you're not with the biggest salary. Yeah, it's
I think what's important, which it's easier said than done when you're going through it or about to go through it, is that divorce is not an end in itself. There's a whole other life that comes after, that can be just as good, better, different, but it's not. It's certainly the end of a chapter, but it's not an end in itself. So you want the biggest advice is to really don't underestimate the emotional part, impact, or the impact emotions can have at that moment in time, and put the intentions. If you start realizing that it is a moment, you acknowledge that the emotions are very present, you become aware of those, and you work through them. That actually then you have more control over the way in which you want your divorce to go than you think you might do. And obviously I'll always vouch for the amicable route, whether it is directly, whether it is through mediator, whether it is through lawyers as well, because lawyers can as well help you. They're not there just for the big conflict. They can also help you go through the process. But to really to acknowledge the emotions, the emotional part in a divorce, to work on those with the help of someone, or to at least be conscious that part is there, that then helps you go back to a more rational way of thinking and go through it step by step.
And this is a bit more personal, but how would you say that the journey of divorce has shifted your identity or not?
Huge. Huge. For me, it was a huge growing experience. I can't say going through it, and it lasted several years, so it wasn't easy by any means. But I chose to try to grow from it. I thought, right, this happened. It happened for a reason. There are two people in every relationship. Let me see what I can change about myself, how I can grow from this experience, what I need to challenge in myself. Really, how can I grow from this? You can decide again whether you see yourself as a victim and live through that process at any point. So everybody will feel victim through it, but coming out of it, do I want to be a victim, or do I actually want to learn from this and grow? And the transformation journey has been huge since then. Huge in the way I think it's helped me with my career change. It's helped in the way I see my relationship with my children, with my partner today. It's had an impact on many, many things for the better.
And how do you deal a little bit with the kids? Because I mean, obviously it depends on what age they are and how much they can understand or not. And often you always, I mean, very often, there's always one parent that is not okay with it. So it kind of like brings this tension to kids as well, because it kind of have to, like, almost feels like you have to choose, but you don't have to, but you kind of have that pressure, indirect pressure of like, you should choose a parent, basically. How did you manage that?
It's huge, because there is, whether it's conscious or unconscious, I think every parent going through a separation at one point, again, we have fear coming out. We have fear of losing our children. We have fear of not having as much of an impact on their life. It's big. And I think, I want to say every parent at some point feels that. And it's very frequent for children to feel, children of parents who are going through a divorce, to feel, like you said, that they have to choose a parent, that they feel that they're stuck in a loyalty conflict, or that they become parentified, they have to take on a parent role. And again, it's not the divorce in itself that really damages or that has an impact on the children. It's the conflict and the way in which the parents deal with the separation and the relationship post separation or divorce. It's not easy. I think it's knowing how to seek external help when you need it. And I know at one point it was important for me to get support from people who could help our children during a very specific period of time, and that was great. So it's knowing when we all have our limits, knowing when it gets too much. It's knowing. One of the best advice a friend told me at the time, she said, your children don't need a mom who's present all the time. They need a mom who's happy with herself and who's doing well. And I think it took a huge amount of pressure off, because obviously when you do go, you have your children every day all of a sudden. But so you feel you have to make up for that lost time. You feel you have to be overly present. And actually, no, it's very right. What they need is a mom or a woman, a mom who's or a dad, who's well, who's balanced, who's happy in their life. That's the biggest gift you can give them. It's not trying to make up for the loss of time. It's really being present. It's a lot of communication as well. A lot of communicating, understanding their emotions, trying to make sure they know that you're there. They don't always want to talk about their emotions, but for them to understand
there's
that they
space for
can come
it,
to you, that they can be angry, that they can vent out the good, the balance, that it's okay for them to vent out, and reassure them that as much as possible, that whatever happened between mom and dad has nothing
to do with
you and the love we have for you as our children.
Yeah, because that's really, I come from divorced parents, and I remember that, and I'm like, oh my God. Because it felt like I had to choose. And then if you ask for one, then the other one feels betrayed somehow. And you're just like, well, it's still parent, it's, so it is it's a tricky position as well for the kids, because it has an impact. And what would you say that, because I hear you say that you have a certain mindset that, you've challenged yourself, you fail, you get back up. What elements in your childhood, because those are foundations that you pick up when, you're smaller, have helped you in this journey? Because I just think that sometimes we don't realize that there's narratives that we have that whether good or bad. And yeah, I'm just curious, what are those that to you have helped you through your journey?
They're huge, undoubtedly. They're huge. I think my parents, well, we traveled a lot when I was younger for my father's job. So very early on, we had this ability to discover, to be open to new cultures, to new mindsets, to new mentalities. So there's always this willingness that willingness to learn, grow, discover new places, new people that came from a very early stage. But the other most important thing are the values our parents taught us. We come from a family where the values are very, very present. And I think they were huge. They're a huge founding block for everything I've done in my life after that, is to try to be aligned with those values, be driven, aligned with them. That's been a huge part of what they gave my sister and I. And then the other thing is I did see my dad go through the move of becoming an entrepreneur.
Okay.
So I don't know if that was an example.
Inspire you at the back of your mind.
Probably, maybe. I always admired his career. So I think clearly him becoming his own boss all of a sudden, I remember being proud and thinking, and for him as well to change, to do something that he all of a sudden really, really liked as well, that he was passionate about, was a huge inspiration. So that probably played as well. I don't know, but I think, and the drive they taught us as well to like I said before, keep on pushing, but be driven, challenge yourself.
And how are you transmitting that to your kids?
Hopefully in a similar way, in terms of the values, for sure, are huge, and that I continue. Whether we talk about them, whether we apply them through everyday life, but they're big for me. And the other thing is to let them be their own person. We often say, oh my gosh, you're so much like mom for this, or you're so much like your dad, or actually they're their own person, and for them to really thrive based on certain values, based on an education that we try to give them. But from then on, they're their own person, and I try to be as open as possible for them to develop into the people they want to be, and to try. It's trial and error throughout life. You try, you test, you fail sometimes, you succeed other times, but be bold, dare to try, dare to go for it. That's the best way.
Yeah, it's true. Is there something that we haven't discussed that it's worth mentioning it and bringing up? I mean, divorce is a topic that I think we could talk a lot about it, but also I think it's a topic that is so individual. It's so individual,
yet it's so awfully common.
Yes,
because so many people that yet when it's your own life, it feels like
it only happened to you.
Nobody else can understand. And the message, certainly from my own story, is that there's no matter how long the process is, there is that light. It sounds cliche, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. You can come through it stronger, better, more balanced than ever before. So it's a transition. It's not an easy one. It's not a comfortable one. It's a scary one. It has an impact on everything, but it's not necessarily it's not for the worse.
How long was your divorce?
6 years.
Wow, 6 years.
Yeah.
And how did you in those 6 years manage to continue? Because sometimes I see from the people I've witnessed going through divorce that they kind of feel that their life is stopped because of the divorce. And from the outside, I'm like, no, man, just keep on doing your stuff, you know? I mean, like, I understand that, yes, your foundations are being torn down and you need to rebuild, but I often see people that they're stuck in the rebuilding because they're not, those foundations are quite not scratched down, you know, like, and I'm just like, yeah, how did you do it to not stop?
Get stuck in the moment and put everything on pause.
Yeah.
You do go through those phases. It's, I went into it very naive. I thought it would be the shortest divorce in history. A few months, it would be done. And I was very naive. And the legal system, once you get drawn into that, we did go through mediation initially, that didn't work. And then once you get caught in the legal system, the deadlines are huge. The process, if you do want to keep it going, is there for it to keep on going. So that was a huge shock. I remember a couple of years into it, that's when it hit. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in it for the long run, thinking, okay, maybe another year. But I need to learn how to manage that, because I can't live every day counting the days until the next deadline, counting the days until we receive a decision from the court. It's impossible to live that way. But there is that phase where you think, oh, and that's again a phase where you feel very lonely, because your lawyer will give you a deadline, great, but then nobody else around you really understands what it means to wait for that deadline. And once you receive that news, what the impact of what that news means. So you go through phases, but I remember a couple of years into it, I thought, right, you need, life goes on. You need to continue living as though it was no longer part of your life. And I did manage at some point, with the help of therapy as well, but to put it in a place where it wasn't front stage all the time. I put it at the back of my head, but it does take, you can't lie to it takes emotional bandwidth, and it takes mental bandwidth.
Yeah, it takes space.
But you do learn how to put it a step back, because you have a life, you have a job, but more importantly, you have your children who are in a young age, who need you. And it's not fair on them, on anyone, to really put everything on pause whilst the divorce goes through. So there is a moment in time where you learn how to put it at the back of your mind. It's there, but it's first and back, and you live your life. But it's also been an experience. It taught me one thing in life, which again sounds cliche, but to really take the simple pleasures in everything. You can't control everything. I used to like controlling my job, a lot of things, and going through a divorce makes you realize actually it's a great learning experience. You can't control anything. So make the most of the present moment. Take the little simple joys everywhere you can. And that makes.
And what advice would you give to the people surrounding someone going through divorce?
It depends, because sometimes if they've been through a divorce themselves, they might. I've had people with the best intentions, and really the best people who I love dearly, but who haven't been through that experience. And it's hard sometimes to hear advice. Because again, there are a lot of things, you know perfectly well what you should and shouldn't be doing. You know perfectly well what you should or shouldn't be thinking, the way in which you should or shouldn't be acting, but the emotions just take over, and you can't, you don't have the bandwidth to take that step back. So sometimes all you need is somebody who's just there, not necessarily giving advice, just there to listen if you need to talk, there to give you a hug. If you need a hug,
just be present.
But present and check in, because that's the other thing. You start going through a divorce, you share it with friends and family, then you don't want to then you realize it's for the long run. It could take a few months, a few years, and you don't want to talk about it every time you see them, and it's not healthy to do so.
No.
But so for the family or the friends surrounding, just to check in every so often to say, by the way, I know we're talking about what we're going to do this weekend, but actually, how are you doing with everything else?
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I'm like, how can one be better at that as well? So thank you, Melanie, for all this. I was thinking when we were going to sit, I was like, what we should talk about, but I was like, it's such a broad subject that, I found it difficult to like pinpoint into something very like a specific direction. But I'm so glad that you are doing that, because I think you can help a lot of people. And I think it needs to be known more that this exists, because it could, it could prevent conflicts. It could make the journey a bit more lighter than
it shorten it.
It could shorten it because 6 years is a long time. It's and I see it. It feels like their life stopped, and you're like, no, but like,
no. Let's move through those different blocking points.
Yeah, exactly.
And try to move through them quicker than you would otherwise, because it can only be of benefit to you, for your mental health, for your children, for your finances,
for everything, just the whole ecosystem. But I will share your details. I've already talked about you to some people that I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, I met this person and I think you should have a look. Hint. But not that I'm pro-divorce.
To talk about it, that's the thing. But it doesn't mean it's not because we speak that
exactly
they will necessarily go through with it.
No, exactly. But I think it's like all those taboo subjects. If you talk about it, it just makes it a bit lighter, and it doesn't necessarily that you are for it or against it or whatever. But it's just, it opens the field of like communicating knowledge and all that, and that can only be helpful. And so yeah, that's why I mentioned it. And I was like, I don't think you should divorce, or you do what you have to do. But
just in case,
this is something you're bringing up quite often. So maybe have a chat with someone, because honestly, I see, I've had a few people talk to, and they start mentioning this and this, and you're like, how's it going? And then you start scratching and they're like, not great. And even talking about the fact that there is season. And I think marriage is one of the hardest part, is that often people think it's like all lovey-dovey. And I'm just like, I think it's about a lot of work. A lot of work, compromise.
Communication.
Exactly. Also work on yourself, because a marriage, you go through so many different identities and changes and evolutions that it's normal that sometimes one is here, the other is here, and then you go, but it's in that communication and like that sharing, and again, talking about like these tough topics that can make things a bit smoother, and like you said, they might come and they're like, oh no, actually, well, no, this, and
and I might lead them to somebody else. Have you tried therapy? Have you tried to speak to a mediator, just to tackle a certain topics as well that can block your communication? Sometimes it's very specific topics like finances being a huge one. We'll try to address that issue. Don't go through the whole, don't throw it all out of, don't throw it right away, because like you said, a marriage takes work. And I think people, in a way, as long as the procedures are sometimes nowadays, it's also become very easy to divorce. And marriage does take time and effort. You need to, it's not an easy ride.
No,
it's a roller coaster, but it's a great one. But people do need to put the time and effort and not be stuck in their position.
But I think it also goes with society, that I feel now, if it doesn't work, then you move on. And because a lot of people are like, but back in the days, it was marriage lasts longer. And I really think it's just because before, they knew it was work. And unconsciously, not necessarily conscious of like, we're going to get married. Obviously, sometimes for women, it was obligation to survive and so on. But I really think that there was this side where they kind of knew it was work. and that it wasn't going to be lovey-dovey and all like glamorous on social media and all that, you know? And I think that today it's,
they're not willing to put that effort anymore. They move on. The thing is, if they move on, they're just taking the same challenges or the same issues onto the next relationship.
Yeah.
Because like you said before, it's like we were saying, it takes two in a relationship.
Yeah.
So if there are struggles, if they're the good and the bad comes from
both,
the energy and the intentions both people put into it. And so you do need to be able to sometimes analyze yourself. It's so easy to go into saying, oh, it's his fault, or it's her fault, or he or she's doing everything wrong. But actually, there's always something to work on oneself as well. So to just leave a marriage, to move on to the next relationship without questioning yourself is not the right. It's not the right option, I don't think.
Yeah, no, and you'll repeat patterns.
Exactly.
I mean, until you actually work through them, and doing that is not the easiest.
But it's not a comfortable place to be in. But when you come out of it, it's a great place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming, for sharing all this. I will put up your details and
Thanks so much.
yeah, and I hope we can do this again.
Would love to. Love chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.